So a story came out earlier this week. This video is going to be uploaded on Sunday, so by then it's going to be a little late than normal, but I just wasn't really sure if I wanted to talk about this entire subject because of the brutality of the situation at hand, especially when it was first reported. And essentially what had happened was revolving around an IRL streamer in Japan by Ari Sato, aka also known as on the internet, Mogami, and she's a very popular streamer over at Japan on a particular Japanese website. I forget what the name of it specifically, but she was very popular. She was one of the top streamers on that site specifically, and she was very popular. She got donated a lot of money from a lot of people who really liked her personality. And apparently one of these people was a man known as Takano, and Takano had really liked her personality, and unfortunately one day on I think the 11th of March, he had went up to her in real life during her live stream and he murdered her. I think it was a total of like 30 stabs across like her abdomen and her neck and head and whatever. It was very brutal. It was a very brutal, savage murder. And like also during the live stream, he was like kicking her body and asking like, is she dead yet? Or something along those lines. It was very brutal. I mean, it was very tragic and sad hearing about this and reading it, because Japan isn't really known for having murders that are this brutal, let alone crimes at all. Like, I believe Japan is one of the few countries that has like a very low crime rate. Obviously crime still happens, but not to this degree. Like the only crime that I can think of that had like a high mortality rate, or fatality rate rather, was the arson attack against Kyo Annie and her animation studio that happened I think in 2019. I think that was in before the pandemic, and that was a very sad and severe situation that cost a lot of people their lives. So when this came out, it was very shocking, and just I didn't even want to read it. I just read the title of the article and was like, yeah, that's awful and that's terrible, tragic. Like, I feel bad. Apparently there was a lot more information that came out later on by a YouTube channel named Mujin. I'm gonna go ahead and link the video that I watched just a couple minutes ago in the description and in the pinned comment and in the comments down below. So I would highly suggest that you go and watch it, because like, he goes over pretty much everything that you really need to know about the situation. I'm only going to talk about like a couple of things regarding the entire background leading up to what would eventually happen on March 11th. And to put it in perspective, I don't think either side is completely innocent. I'm not trying to condone murder in any way specific, because obviously killing people is a horrible thing to do. But when you learn more about the backstory and like what happened between these two people and what led up to the ultimate conclusion of this arc, I guess, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad on both ends. So essentially what had happened is that Takano had discovered I Mogami during her live stream, and he really liked her personality, and they might have had gotten in contact with each other beforehand. I'm not sure how they got into contact initially, but at one point she ended up contacting him and she started asking for money, and she really needed money for whatever reason. She would always give a different reason every single time she would ask for money. At certain points she would ask for like 20,000 yen or like 50,000 yen, and it would just keep going up and up and up and up about how much more yen that she would need to ask from him. And it was getting upwards to like hundreds of thousands of dollars apparently. Do the conversion rate, obviously, and like you're gonna realize like how much money that he was giving her. And I think it was upwards to 2.5 million yen, which in American dollars it's I think 20k, or roughly around 20k. And essentially what was going on the entire time, and the only reason why he was really giving her all this cash to begin with, was because she was constantly emotionally manipulating him and trying to convince him to give her any money that he can give. So essentially what he was doing was that he was asking and getting loans from debt collectors so that way he can give the money that he was getting from them, and giving them false information about his like income and like his life and etc, etc. He was basically telling them whatever that he could to convince them to give him a loan, and he would give the money that he got from the loan to her, because I guess just for whatever reason he thought that maybe she cared about him and that she loved him. Because if you look at some of the messages, some of them are pretty badly translated. Mujin explains that in the video, but if you read some of the messages that eventually got leaked, I don't know how they got leaked, by the way, they're out there and I guess they're true. But if you look through the messages, she's constantly talking about how she wants to die, and I think at certain points she mentions her sister, and she has a child and she needs to take care of the child alone, and she was just constantly manipulating him and trying to convince him in any way that she could to get some money out of him. And that's all that she cared about. And if you read some of the messages, you can obviously tell that this isn't like the first time that she's done this. So she's probably done this to multiple other people, multiple other guys. So there are probably a bunch of other victims of like a situation like this that happened between her and them that we don't even know about. So yeah, she essentially ruined his life, and yeah, you could argue that he essentially did it to himself because he didn't need to give her all that money, but I feel like he wouldn't have felt so obligated to do so if she didn't constantly emotionally manipulate him into thinking that she desperately needed it for whatever reason that she would give him. So this was a really upsetting situation to learn about. First off, just hearing about someone getting murdered like the way that they were, but to then learn that she, on the back end, a couple years ago, had been lying to him and manipulating him to give all this money to her, it just was incredibly upsetting to see, especially considering the fact that he had actually sued her and got a court order saying that she needed to pay back the money that was owed to him, but she never did it. So ultimately, she kind of ended up doing this to herself, and it's pretty tragic in a very ironic way, I guess you can say, but I think the only thing that really is left to say is that IRL streaming is a thing that just is incredibly dangerous. The fact that you can be in a public setting and then someone can do essentially anything that they want to you, regardless of where you are in the world, is just absolutely insane to me. And I think we're seeing more and more cases of things happening to IRL streamers that I think IRL streaming is going to eventually die out in the near future, and people are just no longer going to do it because you're either going to get constantly attacked like you're Johnny Somali, or you're going to end up getting attacked and potentially killed because of it. So, especially considering the fact that we have a lot of like nuisance streamers going to like other foreign countries and doing a whole bunch of stuff there to just be a menace to society in those particular places of the world, in those countries specifically. So yeah, just cruel irony at the end of the day. Obviously, I'm not trying to condone murder, but I think when you look at the facts that we have listed out in front of us right now, this isn't a black and white situation where she was an innocent victim that got attacked by a crazed fan. This was a guy who was emotionally manipulated for potentially months on end to give thousands and thousands of dollars in yen, and eventually got to a breaking point a few years later when she refused to pay back the money and decided to take the most extreme approach possible. And it's tragic that this ended up happening. It's tragic that someone had to get killed because of something like this, but at the same time, she's not the most innocent person in the world. She's not the blameless, innocent victim in this situation. She ultimately had done this to herself, so I think that's really all there is to it. This isn't a black or white situation. I think two things can be correct at one time, and the correct thing to assume here is that she manipulated him for thousands of dollars in yen, but also at the same time, he is kind of a crazed lunatic for going out of his way to follow someone in a public setting in Shinjuku and taking their life. So yeah, pretty sad situation. That's pretty much all I have to say about the situation. No, I don't really have much else to add on top of that. I highly suggest you go check out Mujin's video because it's very informative. There's a lot of information that he goes over there. He actually shows off a lot of comments from a lot of Japanese viewers because a lot of Japanese people were very divided about the situation, with one comment that really stuck out to me. I just voice cracked a little bit, saying, "I can't condone murder, but I understand the murderous intent." And honestly, I think that's the best way to summarize this entire situation at the very end of it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe. I want to give a channel shout out to Pager360 and Renegade Enigma for being members. I would highly appreciate if you guys can consider joining the memberships. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out. Peace.